Hello and welcome back to the channel. Before I get too far along uploading more myths, I'm going to lay some of the groundwork and explore whether mystical sounding concepts might have grounding in scientific research. We'll approach these ideas through the lens of a 4D hyperuniverse theory, which posits that beyond our familiar 3D world and a one dimension of time, deeper dimensional physics may underlie phenomena of Earth energies, biofields, and consciousness. Please check out the source material in the channel bibliography that has links to references that I use in this episode, as well as all the research that we've already discussed in other videos on the 4D hyperuniverse. So ley lines are traditionally thought of as invisible straight pathways across Earth that carry subtle Earth energies, often connecting ancient sites. While conventional science does not recognize literal mystical ley lines, it does study various geophysical energies and patterns that could relate to this concept. So in this section, we ground the idea of ley lines in known geophysical phenomena, natural electric and magnetic currents flowing through the Earth, and examine how the planet's energy fields might provide a basis for this lore of ley lines. One scientific foundation for Earth energies comes from geology and geophysics in the paper Earth Electricity, a review of mechanisms which cause telluric currents in the lithosphere. This was published in the Annals of Geophysics. Hellman's review discusses telluric currents, which are natural electric currents flowing through the ground. The paper enumerates 32 distinct mechanisms that generate these currents, from lightning strikes to solar wind interactions. In his own words, telluric currents are natural electrical phenomena in the Earth or its bodies of water. The strongest electric currents are related to lightning phenomena or space weather. These currents form extensive networks in the Earth's crust and oceans. Importantly, Hellman notes that understanding such Earth electricity has practical relevance. These currents can sometimes cause damage to pipelines and telecommunications, and variations in them are being explored for earthquake forecasting. While not mystical, telluric current networks represent real energy lines coursing through the planet, offering a geophysical framework that loosely parallels the ley line concept of an energetic Earth grid. Another scientific perspective connects Earth's energy fields with biological rhythms, hinting that ancient intuitions about power spots on Earth might relate to measurable field effects. Human quantitative electroencephalographic and Schumann resonance exhibit real-time coherence of spectral power densities. The study is Implications for Interactive Information Processing, and it was first published in the Journal of Signal and Information Processing. The study investigates the Schumann resonance standing electromagnetic waves in the Earth ionosphere cavity. It's a natural resonant frequency of around 7.8 Hz and several higher harmonics. Persinger and Sarkola found that the human brain activity can briefly synchronize with these Earth resonant frequencies. In their experiments with 41 participants, they observed repeated transient coherence with the first three modes, 7 to 8 Hz, 13 to 14 Hz, and 19 to 20 Hz of the Schumann resonance in real time. These correspond to the Earth's fundamental EM vibrations and two higher harmonics. The periods of synchrony were fleeting, about 300 milliseconds, occurring roughly twice per minute, but that is statistically significant. The authors report that the results are consistent with the congruence of the frequency, magnetic field intensity, voltage gradient, and phase shifts that are shared by the human brain and the Earth ionospheric spherical waveguide. In other words, the human brain's electrical oscillations and the Earth's atmosphere resonances can line up under certain conditions, suggesting a subtle coupling of bioelectrical activity to planetary EM rhythms. This finding scientifically links Earth's energy to biology, providing a plausible mechanism where standing wave patterns encircling the Earth, a literal physics phenomenon, might influence or synchronize with living beings. It lends a bit of scientific credence to the idea that Earth's natural energy grid, of which ley lines might be a cultural interpretation of, has real effects. While this doesn't prove ancient ley lines exist, it shows the Earth does have energetic structures and frequencies that impinge on life in measurable ways. Such evidence invites us to think of ley lines not as a fantasy, but perhaps as an intuitive mapping of geophysical energies that science is just now beginning to understand. Qi, or Qi, as described in traditional Chinese medicine, is the vital life force or energy flowing through the body's meridians. The aura is often considered the manifestation of this energy field around living organisms. Modern science has long been skeptical of immeasurable life energy, but a growing body of research in biophysics and physiology has started to explore the idea of a biofield, a field of energy and information emitted by and possibly regulating living systems. In this section, we examine scientific studies that approach chi and the human aura as electromagnetic or other biophysical type phenomena. We'll see how researchers measure ultra-weak magnetic or photon emissions from the body and how these might correlate with the ancient concept of chi. A pioneering attempt to bridge Eastern concepts with Western science is found in the biofield hypothesis, its biophysical basis and role in medicine, in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine. Biophysicist Beverly Rubric introduces the term biofield to denote the complex fields of energy emitted by and surrounding living organisms. Rubik's paper gives a historical overview of vital energy concepts like chi or prana, and then proposes a scientific model for how such a field might work. The biofield hypothesis suggests that the body's electromagnetic and subtle energies form a dynamic global regulatory system. Rubik defines the biofield as the endogenous, complex, dynamic, electromagnetic field resulting from the superposition of component EM fields of the organism that is proposed to be involved in the self-organization and bioregulation of the organism. That's a mouthful. In simpler terms, our bodies produce various electrical and magnetic signals from the heart, brain, nerves, and cells. And together, these signals form a whole body field. This field could orchestrate biological processes much like an invisible web, integrating all parts of the organism. Rubik acknowledges that fully explaining life's subtle energies might require more expanding of science's frameworks. It is possible that there are subtle bodies of the human being beyond the physical body that involve realms of mind, soul, and spirit as espoused by Eastern philosophies. A full scientific model of the human being may indeed require elements that go beyond space-time, matter-energy, and require a multidimensional geometry or other novel concepts. Here she hints that a multidimensional approach, akin to the hyper-universe view, could eventually account for phenomena like chakras or auras. However, her immediate model stays within known physics, focusing on ultra-weak electromagnetic fields as a first approximation of chi. Rubik's work is scientifically relevant to chi and aura because it frames them in terms of measurable biophysical processes, laying out testable ideas. For example, that practitioners of energy healing might be affecting this biofield, or that its changes in health could detect the biofield even before physical symptoms arise. It brings the concept of auras from mysticism towards the lab, suggesting the aura might be real and rooted in electrodynamics and possibly beyond. Building on that idea of the biofield of chi or aura is at least partially electromagnetic, scientists have attempted to detect these fields with sensitive instruments. One remarkable piece of research comes from Japan, where a team directly measured magnetic fields emitted from the human body during a chi emission. In this study, detection of extraordinary large biomagnetic field strength from human beings' hand during external chi emission. Qigong practitioners, people trained to emit or project qi, were tested for any unusual electromagnetic outputs. Using a specially built magnetometer with superconducting coils, the researchers detected magnetic field pulses emanating from the healer's palms when they were directing external qi. Under normal conditions, the human body's magnetic fields, like those from the heart or brain, are extremely weak, on the orders of a millionth of Gauss. But author Seto reports spikes of 0.002 to 0.004 Gauss at frequencies of 4 to 10 Hertz coming from the healer's hand during qi emission. This is about 1,000 times stronger than typical human biomagnetic fields. Such a magnitude is utterly extraordinary for comparison, but it is still small in absolute terms. Nobody's bending spoons with these amounts. Earth's magnetic field is about 0.5 Gauss for reference, but far above what the body alone is still expected to produce. Equally puzzling was that no corresponding electrical current on the skin was detected, which would normally accompany a magnetic field of that strength. The team concluded that the source of this magnetic burst was not explainable by any known muscle or nerve activity. As they boldly state, the extraordinarily large biomagnetic field strength cannot derive from internal body current alone, hence the origin of a large biomagnetism still unknown. We suppose the extraordinarily large biomagnetic field strength might be originated from qi energy in the Oriental traditional philosophy. This study is a striking example of science attempting to validate qi. It provides direct measurements indicating that certain people can indeed project a field from their body under special conditions. While it doesn't tell us what qi energy fundamentally is, it shows that whatever qi masters are doing has a physically detectable component, a low-frequency magnetic field, that far exceeds normal bodily electromagnetic levels. In essence, this could be seen as scientific evidence for the aura or qi, biomagnetic aura that can be externally amplified by trained individuals. Such results, if replicated, could support the notion that qi is not merely a metaphor, but tied to real biophysical emissions. It also invites the hyperdimensional question: if a person can output a magnetic field with no detectable internal current, are we witnessing energy transduction from an unseen source, like a higher dimensional aspect of the person's biofield? Studies like Seto's make the qi aura phenomenon tangible and open to further investigation by biophysicists. It's worth noting that beyond magnetism, researchers have also studied biophotons, ultra-weak light emitted by cells, and changes in electrical skin conductance at acupuncture points. For example, other experiments, noted by Rubrick and colleagues, found that acupuncture meridians might conduct electricity or light differently than the surrounding tissue, hinting at a physical basis for the meridian system described in Chinese medicine. In the 1970s, Dr. Valerie Hunt at the UCLA measured high-frequency electromagnetic signals from the body that corresponded to colors seen by aura viewers, suggesting a possible electromagnetic reality to the aura's visual manifestations. These investigations all converge on an exciting idea. The human body emits an energy field that can be measured in various ways, and this field may be what ancient traditions called qi or aura. Modern science is only beginning to map this biofield, but the work so far provides a biophysical context for aura, part electromagnetic, part possibly something more subtle, beyond space-time. The qi flowing in meridians and the aura emanating around us may well be facets of our 4D hyperuniverse nature, where our physical body is 3D, but its life energy extends into electromagnetic fields. And who knows, maybe on even higher dimensions as well. Having explored Earth energies in the biofield, we now arrive at the most abstract layer, consciousness itself. Is there a scientifically supported field or dimension for consciousness? The notion of a quantum consciousness field suggests that what we experience as mind might be grounded in a quantum processes and perhaps connected to a field that pervades the universe. In the context of a 4D hyperuniverse theory, one might argue that consciousness is not produced within the brain alone, but rather as a fundamental aspect of reality, potentially existing in higher dimensional domain and interfacing with the brain. This section examines cutting-edge theories at the intersection of physics and consciousness. We'll look at how quantum mechanics and relativity have been invoked to explain awareness, and how some scientists are extending physical theory to include mind as something emergent from or unified with deeper universal fields, like some of the studies we've talked about from Federico Fagan. A seminal framework in this realm is the orchestrated objective reduction theory, or ORIC, or proposed by anesthesiologist Stuart Hamerhoff and physicist Sir Roger Penrose. Hamerhoff and Penrose in Consciousness in the Universe, a review of the aura theory, published in Physics of Life Reviews, compiles evidence and arguments that consciousness arises from quantum processes inside neurons, specifically within protein structures called microtubules, and that these quantum events are linked to fundamental physics. The aura theory posits that quantum coherence, a state where particles or components behave as a unified wave, can occur in microtubules in the brain, and that collapse of these quantum states, a process that Penrose calls objective reduction, or produces moments of conscious awareness. As Hamerhoff and Penrose describe, we proposed in the mid-1990s that consciousness depends on biologically orchestrated coherent quantum processes in collections of microtubules within the brain neurons. These quantum processes correlate with and regulate neuronal, synaptic, and membrane activity, and that the continuous Schrödinger evolution of such processes terminates in accordance with the specific Darcy-Penrose scheme of objective reduction of the quantum state. The orchestrated OR activity is taken to result in moments of conscious awareness and/or choice. In essence, they marry biology with fundamental physics. The mind is born from quantum state reductions in the brain that are influenced by a proposed quantum gravity threshold, Penrose's theory of OR. What makes this truly a field theory of consciousness is that orchestrated reduction is rooted in space-time geometry itself. Hamerhoff and Penrose argue that these quantum collapses are not just isolated to the brain, but are linked to the fabric of the universe. They write out that the OR mechanism is related to the fundamentals of quantum mechanics and space-time geometry. So OR suggests that there is a connection between the brain's biomolecular processes and the basic structure of the universe. This is a profound claim. It implies that consciousness is tapping into the underlying quantum field that composes reality. In their view, consciousness is non-local in a certain sense, although it requires the brain's structure to occur in our bodies. Its source is entangled with a fundamental level of nature, possibly at the Planck scale space-time geometry. By reviewing evidence from many disciplines, quantum biology, neuroscience, cognitive studies, Hamerhoff and Penrose lend scientific weight to the once mystical idea that mind is a fundamental aspect of reality. They stop short of outright mysticism, but conclude in no uncertain terms that consciousness is an intrinsic role in the universe, not an accident or an epiphenomenon. OR is scientifically relevant to the notion of a consciousness field. It provides a concrete, testable model of how consciousness could arise from quantum events, and it explicitly ties those events to a field-like entity, the space-time geometry of the universe. In a hyperuniverse context, one might interpret this as consciousness residing partly in the fourth spatial dimension, or alternate space, the quantum gravitational realm, and interfacing with our 3D brains. Another perspective comes from cosmology and higher dimensional physics. If consciousness seems hard to fit into our 3D physical world, perhaps it's because it resides in a higher dimension and projected onto our brains. Prominent physicist and consciousness researcher Bernard Carr advocates for such a view. In Hyperspatial Models of Matter and Mind, and Beyond Physicalism Toward Reconciliation of Science and Spirituality, Carr, Kelly, Roman, and Littlefield extends the idea of extraspatial dimensions beyond length, width, or height to include realms that might host mental phenomena. He suggests that our physical and mental worlds are two slices of higher dimensional reality. In this model, the brain is like a four-dimensional interface that taps into hyperspatial mind and domain. Carr argues that certain puzzling features of our consciousness, like the sense of a unified self, qualia, or phenomenon such as telepathy or out-of-body experiences reported in parapsychology, might be explained if the mind has access to additional dimensions, where space and time behave differently. As Carr writes, a proper understanding of the passage of time and consciousness requires the invocation of extra dimensions, beyond the fourth-dimensional space-time of relativity theory. In other words, the linear time and local space we experience might be embedded in a larger dimensional matrix, and our consciousness could be the result of our brains accessing that matrix. Carr connects this idea with modern physics theories that already use higher dimensions. For instance, string theory has 10-dimensional space and brain cosmology. He is essentially building a bridge between science and spirituality by using the notion of a 4D plus hyperuniverse as common ground where matter and mind meet. Scientific literature supports pieces of this view. For example, the mathematical theory of Hilbert spaces in quantum mechanics provides an abstract infinite-dimensional space in which quantum states, potentially including a conscious state, are described. It's intriguing to note that mainstream physics has no issue with extra dimensions per se. What Carr and others are doing is assigning consciousness a place in those extra dimensions, which is a bold hypothesis, but not impossible. The scientific relevance of Carr's hyperdimensional theory is that it can potentially explain why consciousness can seem non-local, as in reports of awareness outside the body or memories in near-death experiences, because the mind substrate isn't entirely inside 3D space. It also resonates with the earlier ideas, Rubik's hint that a full model of the human being may need a multidimensional geometry, and Hamerhoff and Penrose's suggestion of consciousness rooted in space-time geometry. If we truly live in a 4D hyperuniverse, then ley lines, chi, and consciousness fields might all be connected at that level. The Earth's energy grid, the biofield, and the consciousness field could be different manifestations of higher dimensional structures influencing the 3D world. In summary, the exploration of ley lines, qis, and consciousness through a scientific literature reveals common theme, an interplay between the seen and the unseen, the material and the informational. Ley lines may correspond to the Earth's natural electromagnetic grid and telluric currents, indicating our planet has an energetic blueprint that ancient peoples and intuited modern science is mapping. The concept of qi and the human aura aligns with bioelectromagnetics. Living organisms emit fields, and these fields might be as vital to life as biochemical processes, forming a bridge between mind and body. At the deepest level, consciousness itself may be more than an emergent brain property. It could be rooted in quantum fields and extra dimensions, a cosmic substrate in which our individual minds are immersed, much like eddies in a vast ocean. This convergence of ideas is where a 4D hyper-universe theory becomes a compelling lens. It suggests that what many call metaphysical might simply be physics we don't understand yet. By remaining grounded in empirical research and theoretical physics, we find that these mystical concepts are not in opposition to science, but rather at the frontier of it. The scientific literature we've discussed serves as stepping stones. From geophysics to biophysics to quantum physics, each provides pieces of a puzzle. When assembled, they hint at a universe with more layers than previously thought. A hyper-universe where energy flows in networks, life pulses with invisible light and magnetism, and consciousness could be a fundamental field. It's a vision both grounded and inspiring. Grounded in that it emerges from real studies and data, and inspiring in that it re-enchants the world. As our understanding evolves, perhaps one day the ley lines of Earth, the qi of our bodies, and the consciousness that observes them will all be reorganized as threads in the same grand tapestry of a multidimensional reality. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell like the winners that you are. And I'll see you next time. Bye.